Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
So, as folks may have noticed, there wasn't an episode last week. If you're listening to this in real time, if you're listening to this years down the road, you'll not have noticed a missing episode. But we've skipped a week. We were away, and so as not to give bad people knowledge of us not being home, we didn't tell anyone ahead of time. So sorry for that. But
also, we were just way too busy to record.
Yeah, we're very busy getting things recorded, and I had there was a lot of prep work to get things ready for me to be able to take some time off because I don't have a backup for all the editing and posting of other shows and stuff like that. So I was very down to the last minute. In any case, we did have some feedback from a few weeks back, because I forgot last time to read this, so I apologize to the listener who sent this in. But this was when we talked about tipping several weeks ago. And this is from Michael Carroll on YouTube, who wrote, I feel like for counter service, where they're not actually a waitress, they don't get tipped unless you have a relationship with them or they went above and beyond in the service. If they have a minimum wage job, then I don't normally tip unless it's a place that I enjoy coming to and want to build a relationship with. That's my 2 cents worth. Thank you, Michael. That's about where I'm at. For counter service, I just don't feel like I don't feel like I should give a tip for counter service. I don't know. It just feels weird to do that, except in very specific circumstances. Like I said, like at a coffee shop, like if I'm getting coffee, that I tip. I don't know why. That's why. I don't think there's a rational reason for it. It's just the way we do it.
Well, with coffee, oftentimes, unless you're just getting like a mug of pre-brewed coffee, aren't you paying for the person who's like kind of crafting your coffee? Like they're doing something to make coffee.
Yeah.
As opposed to just serving something that's pre-made.
Yeah. See, the thing is if you go to Dunkin' Donuts, they're not crafting your coffee.
Do you tip at Dunkin' Donuts?
A lot of people do. I don't, only because I always pay with the app, which is that other issue I brought up last time. This is the paying with the app thing. I don't have cash on me, and like I pay with the app and then pull $1 out of my pocket or something. It just feels weird. But it goes back to when I was a kid. Like there was always a mug there, and you'd get paid. I mean, you pay for your coffee and you get change in the hand, you throw it in the mug. That was the thing. But now it's, I don't know. It feels much more like it needs to be intentional. So I don't know that we've settled anything on that. I don't know that there's a rational explanation for these fringe situations. I think you just do what feels good and, you go with it there. But thank you, Michael, for your feedback. So let's talk about what we've been doing. Before we get to the vacation stuff, last week we had, the week we didn't record, we had our Scout crossover ceremony. And for those who don't remember, when we talk or aren't involved in scouting, this is for Cub Scouts at the end of each scouting year, which follows the school year. They have a ceremony by which the kids move up a rank. So in Cub Scouts, it's age based. So whether you've earned your badge or not, you move on. It's up or out, basically. Whereas in regular like Boy Scouts, you have to earn each rank, however long it takes you to earn it. But with Cub Scouts, you basically cross over to the next level. So Tiger to Bear to Tiger to Wolf to Bear to Weeblo to Arrow of Light, and then to Boy Scouts or BSA Scouts now. So our pack had its ceremony, and the nice thing was that the girls troop 13 was there, and the boys troop 56 was there. So in our pack is pack 56. So Anthony and Lucy are both Cub Scouts. So Lucy was moving up to Webelos 1, first year Webelos. Anthony was moving from Webelos to Boy Scouts, and then Ben is already in Boy Scouts, and Bella and Sophie are in BSA Scouts. So what did you think of the ceremony?
It was kind of nice. This time we had like a little cookout beforehand, which they often, I think they usually try to have
do
food.
some type of cookout thing.
This time it was in the park in the middle of like our town, like the town square.
Yeah.
Right in front of the town hall,
yeah.
Which I thought was a really nice location for it. I think it's the best location we've had so far for a crossover ceremony.
Yeah.
It was nice to have the older girls involved. They
had a ceremony before the pack ceremony where the girls got their neckerchiefs.
They haven't had neckerchiefs even though they've been scouts for a couple of years now.
3 years, I think now. Yeah. And yeah, because the troop has to decide together. Like they get it. It's not necessarily a standardized neckerchief. So the troop all decides on what kind of neckerchief we're going to get. And I don't think the girls actually decided. I think it was decided for them, but
they were happy with what was picked.
It was black with white lettering and trim on it, which Sophie loved. In fact, we were talking ahead of time, like what neckerchiefs the girls should get. And Sophie had said she wanted a black neckerchief. So it does look very snazzy.
It does.
And then, so we had the ceremonies. So we had the food, and you brought your curried coleslaw.
I'm not sure that it was a big hit, but that's okay.
If people tried it, the problem is people have an opinion about coleslaw, I think. And so they don't try it. But there was all kinds of food, tons of burgers. Dan way overcooked the meat, the burgers and dogs. But there was tons of food, and then
not overcooked as in they were cooked too much, but he
cooked too many of them. Yeah, that's what I meant. So then we had the ceremony, which was nice, and Anthony crossed over to Boy Scouts, and they had this nice thing where all the Boy Scout troop lined up, and each boy who crossed over was greeted with a handshake by each member of the troop.
Some of the handshakes a little bit more vigorous than others.
Yeah, as preteen boys are wont to do. So that was nice. That was fun. And so from now on, it's Ben and Anthony in Boy Scouts. So
that should be fun.
That should be good. It should help too, because I think having them both there and for each other makes it easier for both of them. So that was crossover. And then Monday I had to do some recordings and clear up some work. So Tuesday was the day we were going. Now, while we were away, we'd arranged to have roofers come. We had our contractor come to redo the roof. Did I mention before on the show about why we were doing the roof?
I'm sure we must have mentioned before.
The solar panels had been installed several years ago. Actually, were installed improperly. They caused leaking. We had to go through their insurance company. They're paying to have our roof redone. So this guy was going to come in and do the roof while we were away, and so which was convenient. So we went away, and so we went to Cape Cod, which we've been to, as you longtime listeners will know. Last fall, we were on Cape Cod for a week while we were out of our house because of the plumbing disaster, and we stayed at a friend's Cape house, and we had a blast around the Cape, and we kind of said we'd like to go back to Cape Cod.
Right. We'd never really considered it for family vacations, even though it's close, because my perception was always Cape Cod's expensive and crowded.
Right.
But we went the first, going so early in June, we went before the schools all got out. So it wasn't so crowded. In fact, we pretty much had the campground to ourselves. And then we realized that if we camped, we could cut down on expenses a lot. So basically we paid for gas and a lot of gas. Yes. That was the big expense. Campsite itself wasn't too bad. And then we were able to cook out. So we only went out to eat one night when it was
threatening rain. Yeah. So we were from Tuesday through Saturday. So that's we were there. So we had 4 nights. It was $120 something bucks. So the campground is called Sweetwater Forest Campground in Brewster, and highly recommend it. It's really nice. It's old, like 70 something years old, but it doesn't feel like run down. It's not run down at all. The bathroom was nice,
it was clean.
Well kept. The So they have a whole RV section of the campground, but they have a whole separate tenting section. It's just tents. And in they call it in the forest. It's sort of like in a hollow.
Yeah, it's very, you go down a very steep hill. Like it would be too steep for the RVs to even get down.
Yeah.
And the campsites, it's very sort of down in like these little hills, dales.
Hollows.
Yeah. So each campsite is kind of on a different, almost a terraced level, separated by brush. So they kind of felt like little private.
Somewhat private.
Not entirely private, but more private than a lot of campgrounds I've been.
If every site had been filled, it might have felt a little crowded, like people right there.
Right. We were lucky to be there when there was like maybe at the beginning of the week, there was only 2 or 3 other people.
And they were so far away we couldn't see them. Like we saw them like coming and going from the bathrooms. That was it.
But by Friday night, our last night there were more people and it got a little bit noisy. So I think that it's a campground that might not have been so pleasant when it was crowded.
Like like 4th of July weekend, around there would probably be more crowded. Yeah. But
if it had been full, there would have been a lot of people and it would have been kind of noisy and
less pleasant.
Less pleasant.
That's true. It's all about when you go to things. And so while you all, and most of you listening in the United States, were broiling in the heat, Cape Cod was 60s and 70s.
The weather was beautiful.
Sunny, 60s and 70s. Friday was cloudy, threatened rain. There was, in fact, forecast thunderstorms, but we never got thunderstorms. We got a few drizzles, and that was it.
Yeah. We heard some thunder in the distance, but really distant.
And then it got sunny again after the drizzles came through. So the weather was perfect. At night, it got down into the 50s, but pleasant, but not uncomfortable. Like I would throw on a fleece and it would have been I was fine.
Perfect weather for sleeping out. I hate sleeping hot, and so I love it when it's that cool. I opened all the windows in my tent and just had the breeze blowing through and could lay in my sleeping bag and look up at the stars through the windows. It was nice.
Right. So we had 2 different tents. We have a regular small, like 3-person tent that the girls stayed in, the teen girls stayed in. And then we have this big family tent that has 2 rooms that attach, basically.
Well, it's essentially 3 tents that are just connected. One big tent and then 2 small tents that zip onto it so that they're all connected.
Right. You can connect up to 3 rooms, 3 additional smaller tents to the big main tent. Then you could connect even more tents off the back of it. You could create a whole village of tents if you wanted to. I'm not sure why you would. But so we have 2 of the additions, and you slept in one and I slept in the other, and the other 3 kids were in the big main tent.
That worked out really nice. I liked having my own sort of little space, which was connected to where the kids were sleeping, so I wouldn't have to get out of the tent if they needed something in the middle of the night. But I also had a door between me and them, and I could open my own windows and have my own stuff laid out around me, and I wasn't like being trodden upon
and
rolled on.
And I had my own space because I sleep on a cot. I bring a cot. A fold-up camping cot because I just cannot sleep on the ground. I just don't sleep if I sleep on the ground. It's either a hammock or a cot. So trying to think, and the tent works out great because even during the drizzles, we had this little table that we brought in and some camp chairs, and I played hearts with the kids on the table, which was a lot of fun. Yeah,
the big tent is really big. Like I can stand up in the middle of it, which is pretty impressive.
I mean, I can stand up, but that's not a big deal.
No.
So we talked about how quiet it is there. It was really nice, peaceful. There were lots of birds, tons of birds.
So many birds. There were dozens of catbirds. And
bold little things that would come right up to you.
Yeah. They came right up and like perched on the camp stove.
Yeah. Some of the birds we saw: catbirds, orioles, cardinals, jays, grackles,
tufted titmice,
sparrows, of course.
I heard robins. Oh, I saw a few robins.
I saw some robins.
Then there was a hawk.
And a hawk who just flew around all the time, getting mobbed by the jays and grackles.
Yeah, this red-tailed hawk was beautiful. It was constantly being attacked by the smaller birds, and so you would hear it shrieking as it protested.
And Bella said that every time you hear it shriek, it sounds like a commercial for the USA. How? Or like a car commercial. That's what she said. It was like a truck commercial. Can you narrow?
It was
and vultures. We saw vultures.
Did we? I don't remember.
I think we saw a vulture. Then there's all kinds of chipmunks everywhere.
Dozens of chipmunks. So many chipmunks.
And very bold. Come right into your seat. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
very used to people.
Ran right under my chair when I was sitting in the campground at one point.
And then there's a pond near, there. You walk down to a pond where you can canoe, not swim, because there's wildlife in the pond.
Well, we sort of knew from the beginning that there was, because the kids said, we went down to the playground and there was a sign there that said turtle legs. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we walked down to the pond and we were sitting, there was a little dock there. We were sitting on the dock and there were some signs that said, be careful of the wildlife, especially the snapping turtles. And I thought that's, nice. And then a snapping turtle swam right up to the dock where we were sitting, right up. Like if I could have put down my hand and touched it.
Yeah.
Its snout came right up.
The first one was what, like about the shell was about a foot long.
Yeah, the carapace was about a foot long. Yeah. I think all told, like snout to tail, it was maybe a foot and a half, 2 feet long. It was a good size snapper.
Yeah. Of course, then turns out that we were visited then by Godzilla and a dinosaur.
Right. While we were admiring the snapper, which was swimming all around the dock and coming up and nosing around, suddenly a much, much bigger snapper came and did a face off with the smaller one, which eventually turned tail and swam away.
So the bigger one the shell was probably 18 inches or so, and probably tip to tail.
I would
over
guess,
2 feet.
I'd guess almost a meter from nose to tail.
And then the next day there was an even bigger snapper out there, over 3 feet long from nose to tail. Like this thing was a dinosaur. It was huge. It was amazing how big it was. And
they came right up to the dock.
They're used to people being around, I think. They're looking
probably
for food.
used to people feeding them.
Yeah. And then there was a box turtle or painted turtle. There was other turtles there too.
I think it was a yellow striped turtle. Something yellow striped.
He did something. Yeah. In any case, there was other turtles, and there was fishing and stuff there you could do and all that kind of stuff. So it was really nice campground. It's not a camping resort, and that's one of the things I think people have. There are two kinds of campgrounds people go to. There are the campgrounds where people go like, I want to set up a tent or set up my RV and go do other things or sit around a fire. And then there are camping resorts where people I want a pool and I want, activities and all kinds of amenities. And this is not one of those places. There's no pool. There's no swimming at all really on site. It's a campground. There's a game room with a pool table.
It was a good place to go hang out. It would be a good place to hang out on a rainy day. They had couches and chairs and small tables and a
puzzles and board games and books.
Lots and lots, a big bookshelf with books, and they had a TV with videos. It was a place where you could go when the kids were getting squirrely on a rainy day.
Yeah. And there's a camp store, which was well stocked. I mean, there's plenty of the things you would need at the camp store and that sort of stuff. And the people were really, really, really nice. I have to say the staff was really helpful and nice. Which came in handy because we had van problems. The first van problem was one of the morning we got in the van to go to we were going to go to the grocery store and go for a picnic, and the van wouldn't start. The battery was dead. And I've known the battery has been dying. I just need to replace the battery in the van. And the kids kept leaving the door open and that sort of stuff. And it's so it was dead. So the guy had to come down and jump it, which was nice. Took a little while to figure out exactly how to connect it because there's no clear positive and negative terminal. Like the positive terminal was clear, was the negative. I can never remember. The red one was clear, but the other one you have to find a bolt that's on the bulkhead. It was kind of a pain, but we got that. So he jumped it, hopped in the car, and went to go. And I was trying to back up and turn on a hill on this gravel road, and I got stuck. I couldn't go forward because there was a tree, and I couldn't. And if I tried to back up, the wheels would spin, and I spun a groove. We both did spun a groove into one of the tires, so now it needs to be replaced. And so then I had to go back up the hill to the office, and the guy had to bring down his truck and to pull us basically out of the rut so that we could get going.
However, I have to say it was really, really nice that they were able to both jump us and pull us out, and it didn't cost us.
Right. Even refused. I tried to give him a tip, to thank him, and they refused. So really, really nice. They said, give us a 5-star review on TripAdvisor, and you got it. I gave him one.
No kidding.
I already did that as soon as I got home. So they were really nice, really helpful. Yeah. And then just the other stuff we did on the Cape while we were there. So on our way down, we stopped at Cape Cod Canal, where we had a picnic lunch at one of the at the Herring Run, which is where it's run by the Army Corps of Engineers. This little picnic area, basically, in a herring run, because the Army Corps of Engineers dug and maintained the canal. It separates Cape Cod from the mainland, so it's Cape Cod, if you ask Anthony, is technically an island.
Cape Cod is technically an island.
Technically is Anthony's favorite word now.
Because it is cut off completely from the mainland by the canal, except for the 2 bridges.
Accessible by bridge and boat and air, I suppose. And so we had lunch there, and you guys took a little walk down and back. And then...
it's a really, really pleasant park there. I love to go down there.
There's a path, like a bike and footpath that runs along the canal on both sides of the canal, which is really nice. And then we took a ride down to the end of the canal, the northern end of the canal on the mainland side, to a place called Scusset Beach State Park. And there's a fishing pier there, and we kind of walked around that a little bit and watched people fishing. And there's a camping area and a beach down the end, but it's RV only, I guess. It's really kind of weird. I'm not sure whether there's tent sites, but the tent sites are closed. I don't know. I don't know why, but anyway, it's a really nice area. So that was nice. And then so from there we went to it's about another 25 minutes from the canal to Brewster. Brewster, if you look at Cape Cod on a map, Brewster is just before the elbow on the northern side.
Sort of the inside of the elbow.
Inside of the elbow, right. Yeah, so we what else did we do? We went to, we found a really nice beach that had free parking.
Free parking is huge because most places you have to be a resident. Or you have to pay
the tourist fee. Like Cape Cod National Seashore is $30 to park at the beach per day. So this was a big find, and it was this quiet, out of the way place in Harwich, and it was Forest Beach down a neighborhood road,
and it's on the south shore of the Cape, so on Nantucket Sound, where the waves are kind of quieter and the water's a little bit warmer.
Yes,
and
because it catches the Gulf Stream.
Yeah, it's a really nice area of the Cape to wade and beach comb. We found lots and lots of shells there.
Horseshoe crab shells, well casings, well gate casings, all kinds of stuff.
Slipper shells, scallops,
jingle shells, the really translucent, pretty ones. So we actually had picnic lunch there twice, 2 days in a row. And I took a picture of myself with the Be Shock Smart sign. Great white sharks are known to be in the area. If you've watched the movie Jaws, you know this.
Yep. We saw a seal there poking its head out of the water and looking at us.
At Forest Beach?
At Forest Beach.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that was nice. It was a bit windy both days we were there, but sunny and not really conducive to swimming, even though several of our children waded in.
Some of the kids went in, yes.
Yeah, crazy
I would not have gone in. It was not warm.
The second day we went, it was windier and there was a lot more chop, I have to say.
I was surprised they went in, but they were determined that they really wanted to swim, so they did.
And then we also took a ride up to the Cape Cod National Seashore. We went to the visitor center, and then watched a movie. Well, the kids watched a movie about.
We slept.
Yeah, whalers on the Cape. And you and I, dark room, quiet, sitting down. Yeah, that's a recipe for parents falling asleep for 12 minutes.
And it was not really new information for me.
Yeah, it was about the life-saving service and whalers and stuff. So so from there we drove down to what's called Coast Guard Beach. And that's a really nice beach. It's Cape Cod National Seashore is consistently voted in the top 10 beaches in the U.S.
It is beautiful. We were there. We were lucky to be there in the fall when there's like
late September.
Very few people, free parking, and
still relatively warm. In fact, probably warmer than it was when we were there.
Right. So that was nice. So since we'd already been there a few times last fall, we didn't spend a lot of time at the National Seashore on this trip.
Yeah. I kind of wish we'd gotten there like a week earlier. Part of the reason we didn't go back is, like I said, it's that the next day they implement the $30 a day parking started up. So we're like, well, this is our last chance to go because I'm not paying $30 to park at the beach for a few hours, especially since we've been there before and there's other options of things to do. So I'd love to go back again, though. That would be nice. Like maybe we can go camping for like a week in the September or something, or a few days in September to get back down there. So other things we did, we did go out to eat one night. We tried, and we'll talk about the stuff we cooked, but we tried much more than we did at previous camping trips to not eat out. And we did a pretty good job of cooking.
We did not do fancy cooking or experimental cooking. We did
tried and true.
the easy basics.
Yeah. So we'll, future camping trips we'll expand out a bit, but yeah. So the one night we went out was you were determined to have fish and chips.
Yes.
You had a craving for fish and chips, and we looked up a few places. The first place we went, they had no place to sit, indoors or outdoors. Like there was places to sit, but not enough for 7 of us.
Right. They had a couple small cafe tables and one bigger,
picnic table outside.
One bigger picnic table, which was occupied. If it hadn't been occupied, we would have eaten there.
Yeah. And then we tried another place that we passed, and it turns out it's like a burgers and sandwich place. So they
didn't have fish and chips. So
we went up to the National Seashore there was a restaurant opposite the entrance to the national park. But it's this big place, but it was closed, which is interesting. We hadn't noticed it was closed the day before. And so we drove up a little further and we found, is it Arthur's or Arnold's? Arnold's fish shack, whatever. And Arnold's Seafood and Clam Shack. They have miniature golf. And it's one of those places that feels very slick. Like it's been around a long time. They have the whole thing down. It's very clean, very well appointed. Not the cheapest place, but nothing is. There's nothing like we looked at a lot of different places online, and everything is expensive on the Cape. It's just, these days with inflation and the cost of labor, all prices are really high. So you got to spend a lot regardless. And so we bit the bullet. We knew this was going to be our splurge for the vacation, and that's what it was. And it was good, though. The food was good.
Yeah, the fish and chips were excellent. Lots and lots of fries, really good fish.
Anthony had fried shrimp. Ben had chowder. Sophie had a fish sandwich, too.
She did not want fish. She had a chicken sandwich.
Oh, she had chicken sandwich. That's right. Lucy had fried fish, a kid's fried fish meal. Bella and I both had clam strips, fried clams, and it was good. And the chowder was really good. They have to say they make a good chowder, and so that was good. And then from there, other than that, just Saturday we got up early, packed up, headed home. It's like an hour and a half from our house, which is, that's pretty good to be honest. That is not that far to get to the Cape from our house. When we've gone on vacations before, camping vacations, we've generally looked north.
Right.
Mostly in Maine. We've stayed in Acadia. We've looked at places, campgrounds on the coast in Maine. And we realized when we went camping at Gettysburg a few years ago in July, that there's a reason those places don't have a lot of people in tents in the middle of the summer. Like away from mountains or the ocean, it's just too hot. It was 90s when we were there, and it's hard to sleep outside.
It was unpleasant.
90s. Yeah, it was really. We left a day early from that trip just because it was so unpleasant, and it rained every night. Like we couldn't cook a single meal in Gettysburg because every night it was raining, like at dinner time. So, if we're going to camp in the mountains or by the ocean. or something along those lines.
I thought the weather on Cape Cod was perfect for camping.
It was really
I would
great.
totally do that again.
I mean, that last night, it was a little muggier, but not much. I mean, it was a little warmer than the other nights, but still pleasant. So yeah, totally recommend it. So that was vacation. One thing that did happen while we were away is my mom ended up in the hospital. She's still there. She's in the rehab hospital now. She's just, they're not sure what's going on. She's elderly. She's in her 80s and things are going on. And so if you say a prayer for my mom, I would appreciate it. And for my brother, who's her primary caretaker right now. And it's hard. It's hard. Like, yeah, I don't want to have necessarily go into the details of it, but she's having a hard time. So if you could say a prayer for my mom, Virginia, that would be much appreciated. So let's talk about some of the food things we've been eating. But I want to mention one thing that I've been meaning to mention. I do a lot of the grocery shopping. Most of the grocery shopping these days. These days, yeah. And I take the two of the kids with me. And one of the things a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so, we were in the cereal aisle, and buying, Anthony eats Honey Nut Cheerios, Ben eats Rice Chex, and that's about all the cereal we usually buy. But I was like, I remember eating Captain Crunch as a kid. I wonder what it tastes like now. I wonder what it'd be like now. I bought a box of Captain Crunch for me to have. Like, I don't usually eat breakfast. I skip breakfast. My first meal is usually lunch, and I have lunch and dinner, and that's it. On the weekends, though, I'll have something like on Saturday and Sunday. I'll eat something like a bagel or something, or an English muffin and an egg or something. But this time I'm like, I want to get some cereal because I was feeling nostalgic so I got some Captain Crunch, and I'm like, this is pretty good. And then when that was gone, I got a box of, and of course the kids are like, what is this? Because they never have this stuff. And then I got Crunchberry cereal, I think it was. That was not as good, but it was okay. Then I got a box of Fruit Loops, like small boxes. I'm not getting the big giant boxes, but small. So I'm calling it Dom's nostalgic tour of the cereal aisle.
Uh-huh.
See, when I was a kid, we didn't get the fancy sugary cereals. We got Cheerios, Chex, Kix. Kix was like the about as yummy as we got. Occasionally my mom would have, I don't know, something go on. She'd give into some whining or something and buy a box of Captain Crunch, but that thing would be gone by breakfast because my brothers would eat it all, like bowls of it, after dinner, and I would never get any. So it was this idea of the sugary cereal. So
so my experience was similar, except my mom successfully kept the sugar cereals away from us to the point where by the time I got around to, I was not interested.
See, for me, it's what good is being an adult if you can't occasionally splurge on the stuff you couldn't have as a kid?
I wonder if this is like oldest child versus youngest child.
It could be. It could be. I craved the things my older siblings were able to get that I couldn't.
Whereas I was just like, yeah, my mom's right. This is way too sweet.
Well, Bella's the same way. She's like, I don't want sugary cereal. So, other stuff let's talk about some stuff we made in camp. So like we said, nothing fancy. Basically,
the first night we brought some pasta sauce from home and we boiled some pasta and we had pasta and sauce. We bought some salad. That was.
Yeah, we bought bagged salad and we bought some dressing and some tomatoes. So the sauce was the sauce you would make. When you make a pot of sauce for pasta, you always make a little extra, and we stick it in the fridge. And then the kids will sometimes make a little pasta for lunch, or they'll make a pizza and use that sauce. But last time we were like, let's put one of those quarts in the freezer. And so we took the frozen quart with us in the cooler, and by dinner time, it had defrosted enough that I could get into the pan and heat it up. So we had some hot homemade sauce, which was good. And I brought our pasta pot from home that has the pasta draining insert. Because the one thing that when we do scout camping, they always have a pasta meal for some reason. The kids always want to have spaghetti, pasta while they're camping. But no one ever brings a colander. Like, so they're trying to like pour out water and it's never properly drained. And
Why would you not buy a colander?
like, bring a colander. Like, geez. And then the pasta pot has the insert that you lift it up and it drains. Although we thought later when we went back to the store the next day to buy disposable aluminum pans to put the pasta in once it's done cooking, because we had to keep it in the pasta pot because there's no place to put it.
We could have bought a bowl.
Yeah, we could have brought a bowl, but yeah, you definitely need something to put it in. So that worked out. The pasta dinner was good.
Then the next night I wanted to try skewers.
And they had pre-made skewers at the store.
So rather than trying to cut up meat and deal with raw meat and the mess that entails, I thought buying pre-made skewers was a pretty good deal. More expensive than buying the meat and cutting it up yourself, but less expensive than going to a restaurant. So still saving money. But the skewers were pre-marinated and nobody really liked the marinade on the skewers.
Yeah. We tried to get unmarinated ones, but even those still had some spices on them.
Yeah. And I bought some naan to make wraps, but we ate the salad before the skewers were done. So we didn't have any salad to put in the wrap. So it was just basically a piece of bread with meat in it.
It was not the best meal and no one really got enough, I think. Like what they got, they didn't really like. And part of the problem was it took forever to cook because I'm cooking over the fire and I'm trying to do it with charcoal, and I didn't bring a charcoal chimney, which space was at a premium, and it was one thing I decided not to bring. I should have brought it. So I had charcoal, but not a chimney. So I'm trying to like create an intense pile of heat under it, and it just wasn't close enough to the meat.
It wasn't close to the meat, and you didn't have, since it was on an open fire, you didn't have a lid to hold in the heat. Like
right.
The grill would have had a lid.
Or to contain it from the sides even. Like there was, one side was open. So, yeah, I could have done something else with that. I should have done something else with that. Why is... sorry for the noise, folks. The podcast, the... focus mode on my stuff that's silenced at all was not on for some reason. I'm out of practice. It's been too long. So, yeah. So the skewers were, not a hit. And we could do skewers again, but we'd have to do it differently.
But I still think that not making the skewers at camp.
Yeah.
Maybe you could buy the stuff for skewers, make them at home and have that be your first meal.
Or freeze it.
Like that's what I mean. Like make the skewers, then freeze them, and then
if you froze them, they would last till the second day.
You could probably, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I'm wary of
if it were
raw meat.
More so steak than chicken, maybe. Like steak, you can hold for like if frozen steak stuff. If it defrosts a little bit, lasts better than chicken does. It doesn't. Yeah.
Raw chicken kind of skews me out a bit.
Yeah. It would be fine. So we did that, and then the next night we did burgers and dogs, which was more successful. Of course, hot dogs on a stick over the fire. That's always popular. I cooked the hamburgers on the Coleman stove, on the griddle. That worked fine. The stove, though, I've got to figure out why it's got two settings: afterburner and off. And there's no low on it. Like I can't, or medium. I can't adjust it. It's either fully, Falcon 9 SpaceX rocket or it's nothing.
It's got to be that stove, because I've had Coleman stoves in the past that were fine. Yeah,
there's something about the valves on the stove, and maybe I have a defective stove and I need to replace it. I don't know if you can replace just the valves, but I'll have to take. It's a fairly simple thing, actually. If you take it apart, you look at it. It's a fairly simple device. But anyway, so we did that. We had salads most meals and fruit.
The two teenage girls and we had salads. The younger three, Lucy might have had a salad one night.
I think Lucy had a salad one night.
The younger three in general eschew salads.
Yeah.
So we're working on it.
And there wasn't much in the way of vegetables that we could do at camp. For breakfast, the first day we had bacon and eggs. The second day we had muffins and a couple of eggs and we did cereal. the second day. The individual cereals that you can buy in the grocery store. Then we had one day we had muffins, and then the last day we kind of went all out. We had muffins, and we had some cereal. Somebody had cereal, I think, and then I made some breakfast sandwiches, English muffins with egg and sausage. So that went well. And then lunches were like cold cuts and stuff. We had those
cold cuts and PB&J
on the go, out of the van, out of the back of the van. And we went to the grocery store most days just to buy enough for the next, buy enough for the next 24 hours.
Because we don't have room for a really big cooler to hold more than a day's worth of food.
And, the cooler cooling off, like keeping the cooler cold. One of those fridge coolers would be great if I had a van where it could run off of the battery. We just keep running into the power issues. But in any case, so that was our camp cooking and eating. Next time, maybe we'll try something new. I brought the Dutch oven. We didn't use it. I was thinking maybe we could do a stew or something. But I think the more ambitious stuff is in the future. So, man, we've been talking for a while now. Let's move on we got a lot to talk about with reading and watching and that sort of stuff. And I want to start first by talking about how lately I've been playing video games with the kids. And my favorite video game of all time is called Civilization. And it's been around for decades, literally decades, like since the 80s. And it's a world building game, and you build a civilization, and you have to compete with other civilizations. And there is a multiplayer version. And I finally put it was on sale, I think. And so I bought a sale copy, put it on another laptop. And for a while there, Ben and I were playing this cooperative game of Civilization. We were on the same team and going against the computer opponents. And it was a real nice bonding moment. Like he really, we would play for an hour in the morning before work and school. And he had to, make sure that he had taken his medicine and, done a chore, and we were trying to get him to do things. It wasn't always successful getting everything done, but it really became this motivation for him. Like he really enjoyed this bonding moment between us in playing this game together. And I think there's a real father-son thing in that. And then so when that game was over, Anthony wanted to do it. So Anthony and I have been playing a game, and now Lucy wants to play too. So, and I put another copy on again, it was on, still on sale. So I put another copy on another one of the computers. And so we'll have three of us be able to play cooperatively. A 3-person game. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure. Lucy has never played Civilization before, but she really wants to play for the first time with me. So she's watched her brothers play, so she knows how it works. But I just thought it was really nice, sort of a bonding moment. So let's talk about things we've watched. We've continued to watch Kenobi. Mm-hmm. We watched parts 4 and 5 since the last time we were here. Part 5 was kind of awesome. I think there's been more lightsaber dueling in that than we've seen in anything since the movies or since Clone Wars, this animated series. I know it's somewhat the Kenobi is somewhat controversial. Opinions are divided among fans, and it certainly has its bits that aren't great. But I'm really enjoying it.
I'm enjoying it. I would not say it was my favorite of the Star Wars things I've seen.
Right.
But
and of the Disney Plus ones, I would rank them Mandalorian, Boba, Kenobi.
Yeah. But it's good. I mean, I don't hate it.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's Star Wars is Star Wars. It's still Star Wars, So that's been going well. We watched more Falcon and Winter Soldier. We've got one episode left of that. The episode 5 we watched today has probably the best scene in the whole series.
Yes.
Where Bucky and Sam is counseling Bucky about, his PTSD, and Bucky counsels Sam about his reluctance to be Captain America, to take up the shield that Steve Rogers asked him to.
It was a really nice payoff of the early scene in episode 2 where they both sit down in front of the counselor together.
Yeah.
And this was sort of the moment of resolution that the counselor didn't get to see, but we, the audience, do, where they finally come to terms with each other.
Right.
And you can see that there's a possibility for a friendship. They're not there yet.
Oh, they're already friends.
They're not there in terms of acknowledging we're friends.
They're not openly acknowledging it, but they're friends. I mean, that's the guy thing.
It's,
like they're standing there working on the boat engine together without talking. That's totally a guy friend thing. That's what guys do.
Yeah, it's a really nice, it's a relationship story. I really like it. I like the relationship as it develops between Bucky and Sam, two guys who really don't have anything in common except this friend that they both had.
Mm-hmm. And I think the series does a really great job of handling the race issue of Sam Wilson, who was a black man, taking up the shield of Captain America, and both internally and externally. What I mean is, what does it mean for a black man to be Captain America in an America where the history of how America has treated black people is not good? And then externally, how Disney deals with making a black man Captain America in the face of what might be some opposition and maybe accusations of tokenism, to kind of confront it head on and say, why not? Like, this is.
And there's a great, and it's a great character moment too. I really like the moment when Bucky says to Sam, neither Steve nor I, when we talked about giving you the shield, thought about what it would mean for a black man to carry the shield of Captain America. Like,
they straight up acknowledge it.
They straight up acknowledge that it didn't occur to them. They didn't understand. And he apologized. And I really, wow.
Right.
That was a really good moment of Bucky as a character and of the relationship between the two of them.
And
really
Sam
taking that deeper turn.
Yeah. And Sam struggles. And in episode 6, we get a really good, like, his resolution, how his internalization of it, and, how he reconciles there's another black man who is very negative about the idea. He recognizes the other man's valid complaints, his valid issues, and then but I'm doing it because of this. And so it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel Deus Ex Machina. It feels right. So I really like it. It's a really good series. It kind of snuck up on me because I didn't know what to expect the first time I watched it. So it's been really good. So another Marvel property, because the Marvel universe is always expanding. I watched the first 2 episodes of Ms. Marvel. Did you ever watch?
I haven't watched the second one yet. I've just watched the first one.
So this is about a teenage girl who is a huge Captain Marvel fan. And she, by circumstances we find out in the very first episode, she acquires some powers and how she deals with it. And it's really interesting, this one, because straight out of the comic books, the girl she's Pakistani Muslim, and her faith is a big part of the show. And the portrayal of Islam in this is really good. It treats it with respect, but also brings up some of the issues like the treatment of women. I mean, it comes up as you'd expect it to.
And there's, it's a typical teen story in that she's got the conflicts with her parents. She wants to fit in and be an typical American teenager, but she's, the child of immigrants. And
I feel like I almost felt like the first bit was like that was almost cliched.
It was a push. It was pushing the cliche. And yet I think that sometimes stereotypes exist because, well, the fact is that there's truth to it. And I felt like they didn't stray beyond what could be cliched but true.
And her older brother, who is getting married in the story, is very religious. And they don't make anything negative about it. That's what he is. He's very religious. And I just can't help but think, like, if this had been a Christian or Catholic, the very religious older brother would have been a negative. Just like they're treating the track record of Hollywood as such. But I'm not saying this is bad that they're treating Islam well. I just this is how that you should treat religion in these shows, is with respect and internal respect to it, respect to how the people who practice that religion see themselves. So I don't
know if you watched the the
behind the scenes
No. show, but I really liked it. The actress who plays the main character was herself a huge fan of the comic books, and she felt like this is a comic book character who represents me and my culture well. And her fangirling about, I can't believe I have the opportunity to play my favorite comic book character in the show. Like, I get to embody and be her. It was very touching, kind of charming. There's a scene in the first show where she and her friend go to a Avengers fan convention. AvengerCon. And it sort of showed the behind the scenes where she and the two actors are walking through the set.
Yeah.
And they're just gaga over all the stuff. And I think that there's a level where you feel that in the show, in the way
it comes through.
Like, she's just a normal teenage girl who's got a big crush on a character and she wants to embody her. And I love that.
Not a crush, like she's fangirling.
Yeah.
Like, well, having a crush might imply something else.
But she's just a huge fangirl, and having teenage daughters who are Marvel fangirls, I felt like she was a character who our kids haven't seen it yet, but I think that she will definitely connect with our daughters. And I think that they'll really enjoy the show.
Probably even more than any of the other Marvel series. This will be the one that really grabs them. So yeah, it's good so far. The second episode is good, and it includes a depiction of the celebration of Eid, the holiday, and which is they do a good job of. So it's kind of fun. So you finished a couple books.
I did. I finished The Aviator by Eugene Vodolazkin, which was awesome. So continuing the streak of really loving his books, and then I dove into a couple of science fiction novels, which one of my friends has been recommending for forever. I finally said, well, sure, I'll take a hit. And it's the, I know I stumble over this name every time I read it, Vorkosigan Saga by Lois
McMaster Bujold. Bujold.
And it's kind of standard science fiction. It takes place sometime in the far distant future, some place where people are, living out in colonies in space. Not a whole lot of history about how they got there from Earth or anything. The first novel, Shards of Honor, was kind of a typical romance adventure story. The main characters are stranded on a planet together and have to, it's a survival situation, and even though they're enemies, they have to help each other survive. And of course they fall in love. Kind of standard, typical, lots of tropes that are very familiar. And the second one also, I felt like there were a lot of sort of standard science fiction tropes. It reminded me a little bit of Honor Harrington. But pleasant. I liked the characters. It was, fun science fiction, escapist adventure. I'll probably read the rest of the series.
Okay.
The second one, they're married and they have kids, and it's kind of a fun mom on adventures. Cool. And I like characters who are moms who get to be, interesting characters going on adventures and doing things while balancing motherhood. It used some of the standard science fiction tropes of, in the future, we won't have to actually be pregnant. We can put our babies into artificial wombs. And that kind of bugs me a bit. I just don't see that as a plus, but it at least sort of presented both sides of the picture. It had characters who were both giving birth naturally and using the artificial wombs, and it sort of showed the pluses and minuses of both. Still not really a fan of that trope.
So it's interesting. It turns out she's, as of January 2020, she was the artist in residence for the metals department at the Appalachian Center for Craft, a campus of Tennessee Tech, because formerly she was a metal artist and welder in Portland, Oregon.
Interesting.
And vice president of the Northwest Blacksmith Association. That's kind of funny.
That
Talented. So, and those two books, so Shards of Honor and
then I started this week a book which felt kind of appropriate for the whole camping experience, which is one I picked up for free on Amazon. They were doing some sort of a try these books deal, a bunch of international novels, and I can't remember what the deal was. Anyway, I was just like, hey, free books. If they're bad, I can delete them. If they're good, well, then I've just got some free books. So this one was a Japanese novel, like written in Japanese. And I'm trying to remember the title. It was called something like Everything is Fine in Kamasura Forest. I think that was the title. Anyway, it's been kind of fun. It's about this kid who graduates from high school in Japan and doesn't have any plans for the future, but his parents are not really on board with him not having any plans. And so they conspire with his teacher to get him a job working in forestry. So he's leaves Yokohama, where he's grown up, and is shipped off to the forest mountains to learn how to be a forester. It's kind of a, typical coming of age, fish out of water story, but in Japan. And it deals with a lot of the Japanese culture and some like Japanese folklore and mythology. There's kind of a little bit of a magical realism, like the forestry people, the mountain people believe in the gods of the mountains. And there's some scenes where like, what just happened here? Was it just their imaginations, or is there actually something out there? So it's been fun. It's kind of the first person narrator of a 17-year-old kid. So lighthearted and breezy and not super deep, but it's enjoyable.
Okay.
And kind of reading it in the woods with the wind blowing through the trees felt appropriate.
So that's what we've been reading and watching and all that. So let's talk a little bit. Today is the Feast of Corpus Christi as we record. And so just a couple of thoughts are we went to Mass today at our parish, and the celebrant was Father Willie Raymond, who you might know from the, we mentioned him before. He sometimes does Mass at our parish. He's from the Holy Cross Fathers and the Holy Cross Family Ministries. And so he mentioned a couple things in his homily regarding the Eucharist. And one of the examples he brought up was Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Who's a family favorite. We went to her shrine a couple years ago on our Gettysburg trip.
Right.
And I've read it. I've read a book about her to the kids, so they're all familiar with her story. But then I also read a not for kids book about her, which really, she went from being a saint who I thought I didn't really have much in common with to being a saint who I really admire and look up to and feel a close personal connection with.
Mm. And he was telling her story because of the fact that, when she was she was married, she was Episcopalian, living in New York. They had 5 kids at the time, I think. I think they already had 5 kids.
Yeah, kind of complicated because they had 5 kids, but then they also had adopted his parents. Her husband's parents had died, and he had a lot of younger half siblings, and he was the oldest. So when his siblings were left orphans, Elizabeth and William adopted his half siblings. So she actually had a pretty large family. So
he was very sick, and they were going to Italy where it was warm, and the
traditional cure for tuberculosis was to send you to a warm climate.
Right. And he had a business partner over there that he worked with, that they were going to go stay with. And when he got there, they were quarantined for 40 days in a drafty, nasty Italian prison because he had tuberculosis.
Well, no, I think the ship was everyone on the ship was quarantined because of yellow fever or something like that.
Something like that. And so he ended up dying in there of his disease. And so she was newly widowed, far away from home, and this Catholic family took her in. And it was their witness of their devotion to the Eucharist that really drew her into the Catholic faith.
Right. Really
that was
nice,
the story he was telling.
Yeah, the story and her witnessing actually a Eucharistic procession through the town and watching people on the streets who are going about their daily business suddenly stop and fall to their knees. And as an Episcopalian, she actually had sort of a proto-Eucharistic devotion. She took communion very seriously, and she would actually fast the day before she received communion, which wasn't weekly in the Episcopal Church.
Well, even in the Catholic Church, it wasn't necessarily weekly either.
But she took it very seriously, and she had written in her diary and written letters to people about how she just went into these transports just receiving Episcopalian communion. And so when she realized what the Catholics believed, that like Jesus is really, truly present, she just said, oh my gosh, I can't believe if that's true, I want that.
There were a variety of Episcopalian, and still are a variety of Episcopalian beliefs about the Eucharist. Some have very close beliefs about it to Catholic.
I think especially later, after like the Oxford movement, I think moved a lot of Episcopalians closer to a Anglo-Catholic, more of a Catholic understanding of it.
Right.
But at the time of Elizabeth Ann Seton's life, it was taken seriously, but it wasn't quite the same as the Catholic understanding.
Right.
But she was a very devout Christian before she became Catholic. Once she converted, though, she had been at the top of New York society. Like, they were well off, and they hobnobbed with people like Alexander Hamilton. And she was shunned because you don't become Catholic. And there was one Catholic church in New York at the time, and it was frequented by immigrants from those Catholic countries like Ireland and
Italy and France.
And yeah.
So yeah, it was an unpopular decision. So he told that story. He told about Elizabeth, and then he told another story. He said that Cardinal Dolan likes to tell about when Cardinal Dolan was the rector of the North American Seminary in Rome. The seminarians would often be enlisted to give English language tours of St. Peter's. So seminarians from different national seminaries in Rome would give tours to pilgrims in their native languages. And so the American ones would and for some reason, this American seminarian was leading a tour of St. Peter's for a Japanese tour group. Maybe there was no Japanese tour guides like seminarians available. And so English was a language they could understand. And, he took him around to all the great sites in St. Peter's, the statues, the beautiful art, the chair of St. Peter. And the tour always ends at the chapel of the Blessed Sacrament, which is a beautiful place set aside in St. Peter's. And chapel is misnomer. St. Peter's is so large. The chapel is like the size of a parish church. I mean, it's big, and it's open, but there's a divider, and it's set aside for prayer. And the seminarian explained to these Japanese tourists, who none of them were Catholic or Christian, what's going on here and what the Eucharist is. And after he had done that, one elderly Japanese man stayed behind and went up to the seminarian and asked him to explain the Eucharist again. And when he had done so, the man said, what did he say? No wonder these people are all so prayerful and devout if this is what you believe about that God is present here, or something along those lines.
No, he said, if what you say is true, then what's there is the greatest work of art in this entire beautiful church.
Right. That's what it was. Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't exactly remember it. It's late. So he told a few of these stories and connected them together with the Eucharist and the feeding of the 5,000. And so it was really a really good homily, really nice. I always love this feast, the Feast of the Eucharist. And I always wish we could get the Sacrament Most Holy instead of Table of Plenty. just like one of the great Eucharistic hymns of the church, and instead we get these modern hymns, which are not.
It would also
great.
be nice to have a Eucharistic procession at our parish.
That would be nice. We'll have to talk to Father about that sometime. Maybe one year we'll do that.
I think the Cape Verdeans do.
It looked like they were setting up for something like that for the Cape Verdean mass. Yeah, and then what else was there? I think that was... Oh, and then the sequence. I always love the sequence, the poem.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got the short version just read by the lector rather than a sung version.
Mm-hmm.
I always wish they didn't cut it short because I love the whole thing. Although I know it's long and a lot of people don't want the whole long thing.
And apparently the OCP is not putting musical settings in for the sequence. They're not providing a musical setting for it. Because it's OCP. Why do they do anything? Because there's no money in it or something. I don't know.
I want my sequence.
Yeah, OCP, GIA. Yeah, it's a whole nother issue of the modern liturgical industry. Anyway, Corpus Christi, thank God.
Beautiful, beautiful feast.
Yes. All right. It is late. It has been a long week. It is time for us to end this show. And before we do, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Carl D., Michael K., Valcovius, Caroline G., and Rob G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. You can find links from our discussion in our show notes at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Send your feedback to the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to bets@sqpn.com, or come join us in the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. Until next time, I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.